At 7:34 in the morning on May 9, 1980, a freighter vanished into a wall of rain over Tampa Bay. Less than 2 minutes later, 1,200 feet of one of America's tallest bridges plunged 150 feet into the water below. 35 people died in roughly 30 seconds. A Greyhound bus full of strangers, a 6-month-old baby, a 92-year-old grandmother, 6 college students heading home for Mother's Day, and one man stopped his car just 14 inches from the edge of the world. This is the story of the Sunshine Skyway Bridge disaster, the deadliest American bridge collapse of the 20th century, and the chain of events that began with a single thunderstorm and rewrote how every modern bridge in the country is built. It is also the story of a harbor pilot who became a national scapegoat, a freighter that somehow survived to sail another 30 years, and a hard-earned warning that engineers learned in 1980, forgot, and then watched it repeat itself in Baltimore on March 26, 2024. Before we go any further, hit that subscribe button and drop a like, because what you are about to hear connects directly to a list of 68 bridges still standing in America today. Bridges that you have almost certainly driven across without ever knowing the risk. To understand what happened on May 9th, you first have to know what the original Sunshine Skyway actually was. Opened on September 6, 1954, it was a 2-lane steel cantilever truss bridge stretching 15 miles across the mouth of Tampa Bay, connecting St. Petersburg to Bradenton along US Route 19. By 1971, a twin span had been added to handle interstate traffic. But the bridge had a fatal weakness baked into its design. Its main supports stood inside an 864-foot wide shipping channel. That number sounded enormous in 1954. By 1980, it was a death trap. Container ships and bulk carriers had grown 3, 4, 5 times larger than anything the original engineers ever imagined. And nobody in any country had seriously designed highway bridge piers to survive a head-on collision with a 20,000-ton freighter. The Skyway sat there for 26 years with its support columns naked and unprotected in the path of every ship that sailed in. And in 1980 alone, that bay would claim 58 lives in less than 4 months. Because here is what most people forget. May 9th was not even Tampa Bay's first tragedy of that year. On the night of January 28th, just 102 days earlier, the Coast Guard cutter Blackthorn collided with the tanker Capricorn, only 1,500 yards from the Skyway. 23 Coast Guardsmen drowned, making it the worst peacetime loss in Coast Guard history. The waters around that bridge were already cursed when the freighter Summit Venture, a 609-foot Liberian-flagged bulk carrier, heading in empty to load phosphate, picked up its harbor pilot at 6:25 that morning. The pilot was Captain John Larrow, 37 years old, a teetotaler, scheduled for promotion to full pilot just 2 days later. He guided the freighter inbound under deteriorating weather. Then, less than a mile from the bridge, the sky exploded. A violent microburst slammed down out of the storm cell, with winds estimated at over 70 miles per hour. Visibility collapsed from 3 miles to 0 in a matter of seconds. The radar screen turned white as torrential rain absorbed every signal. Larrow could not see the bridge. He could not see his own bow. He could not see the buoys he was supposed to be threading. He tried to drop anchor. He ordered the engines into full reverse. None of it was enough. At 7:34, the Summit Venture rammed Pier 2 south at 9.5 knots. The pier sheared off 54 feet above the waterline. And then, in less than 30 seconds, 1,297 feet of bridge deck, suspended trusses, asphalt, vehicles, and people fell 150 feet straight down. 6 cars, a pickup truck, and Greyhound bus number 4519, carrying 26 souls bound for Miami, including 6 Tuskegee Institute students, going home to their mothers for Mother's Day weekend. Laro grabbed the radio. His voice, preserved on Coast Guard tapes to this day, became one of the most chilling distress calls in American maritime history. Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. The Skyway Bridge is down. Get all emergency equipment out to the Skyway Bridge. Out of everyone who fell, only one man survived. Wesley McIntyre, 56 years old, was driving a Ford Courier pickup. His truck caromed off the freighter's hull on the way down, and he kicked his way out of the cab as it sank into the bay. He was hauled aboard the Summit Venture on a rope ladder with nothing but a cut on his head. Above him, on the surviving northern stretch of the bridge, a used car salesman named Richard Hornbuckle had jammed his brakes on a hunch. He skidded his yellow 1976 Buick Skylark to a stop just 14 inches from the abyss. He had paid the toll 30 seconds earlier with a $10 bill. If he had been carrying exact change, he would have rolled straight over the edge. John Laro never drove over an edge, but for the rest of his life, he lived on one. A state grand jury cleared him. A Florida administrative judge officially declared the disaster an act of God. A Coast Guard panel split 3-2 over whether he bore any partial responsibility, and the press never let him go. Within months, Laro was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. He gave up piloting and spent the next 22 years answering crisis hotlines, counseling rape survivors, and suicide jumpers. He died in 2002. His attorney called him the 36th victim of the disaster. Florida, however, did not rebuild the bridge. It built something entirely new, and it built it to ensure this could never happen again. The replacement, the Bob Graham Sunshine Skyway Bridge, opened in 1987 at a cost of $244 million. It is a cable-stayed marvel, 4.14 miles long, with a single main span of 1,200 feet and pylons rising 430 feet into the sky. But the real revolution is hidden under the water. Surrounding every main pier are 36 concrete fortresses called dolphins, artificial islands engineered to absorb the impact of an 87,000-ton freighter traveling at 10 knots and bring it to a complete stop. The Sunshine Skyway disaster forced the American Association of State Highway and Transportation officials to write the first vessel collision design standards in American history in 1991. They were updated in 2009. Most states never bothered to apply them. Then, at 1:29 in the morning on March 26, 2024, a container ship called the Dali lost power as it approached Baltimore Harbor. 6 construction workers died when the Francis Scott Key Bridge fell into the Patapsco River. The National Transportation Safety Board later calculated that the Key Bridge was almost 30 times more vulnerable to a ship strike than safety standards allowed. On March 20th, 2025, the agency released a list of 68 more American bridges that have never been properly assessed for the same risk. The Golden Gate, the Brooklyn, the Verrazzano, the Mackinac, the Chesapeake Bay, and almost cruelly, the Sunshine Skyway itself. 35 people died in 1980, so that one lesson could be learned. 6 more died in 2024 because that lesson had been forgotten. And right now, somewhere out on the water, another container ship is approaching another bridge whose odds nobody ever calculated. If this story moved you, hit subscribe, leave a comment with the bridge you cross most often, and stay tuned for more stories like this one, because the next chapter is already being written.